Welcome back. You're watching Market Cafe on ET now. And of course, the top story that's going to be impacting markets back home, energy sector back home as well, is going to be the crack in crude prices that we witnessed overnight. And that is in relation to Donald Trump once again backtracking when it comes to the Iranian sanctions. And he may in fact actually be mulling waiving them off for certain entities, or perhaps in a larger context. Let's bring on board David Lennox, the resource analyst at Fat Profits, to talk a bit more on this. David, not the first time that we have seen Donald Trump backtracking on a decision taken by himself. Could call him capricious, but at this point of time, we are seeing Brent prices take a toll. NYMEX as well has declined. Do you believe that this could actually come through, where Donald Trump would be providing partial relief from the Iranian sanctions, or there is that that possibility, especially given the fact that Europe is full on supporting Iran, there is a possibility that US as well would consider, in fact, completely backtracking and completely waiving off those sanctions?
Certainly the markets are suspecting that the US will be perhaps a little more lenient than the rhetoric has been to date. If you go back to the first sanctions that were put on Iran some time ago in relation to their nuclear aspirations, one did see during that time period, certainly Iranian oil was able to be taken out the back door, and that kept the oil price probably back then in somewhat of a check. So going forward, you've got to remember that Donald Trump has a number of times suggested that the oil price was way too high for his liking. Now, obviously, with putting into place and strictly adhering to Iranian sanctions, then that would obviously have driven the oil prices higher. The US has realised that, and certainly Donald Trump appears to have realised that, and is now perhaps going to relent a little on that backdoor oil.
So, we're getting very conflicting signals at this point of time, because on one side, we did have EU pleading for exemption from sanctions. And then again, on the other side, we had, Mnuchin saying that, yes, oil buyers may get Iran sanction waivers. So in this context, do you believe that crude prices may slip further, given that there's still a lot of uncertainty? But of course, that's been the name of the game for the Trump administration.
You're certainly right there. We think the real clue is not so much that we will see Iranian oil certainly coming to the market, and there's no doubt even with the sanctions that that's going to occur, but it's really what the total OPEC group are doing themselves. And you've got to remember, just a couple of weeks ago, the group suggested that they were going to lift production by about 1 million barrels to somewhat placate the higher oil prices that we saw back then. They certainly at this stage haven't done that. They haven't gone through and lifted up production by the quantum that they were suggesting. So this may in fact be just part of what OPEC considers is that adjustment with Iran being able to actually deliver into the markets. So we're watching very closely, and of course at this point in time one would have to suggest, as you said, the markets are very confused as to the signals that traders are receiving regarding either the supply of, or in some circumstances, the demand for oil.
Okay, let's keep Iran out of the equation then, and understand whether other OPEC and non-OPEC members like Saudi, like Russia, according to your own numbers and data, have they been actually increasing output, especially over the last OPEC meet that was held?
Look, certainly if you have a look at the June numbers that came out from OPEC, it did suggest that there was about a 173 million barrel increase in production across the whole group. Now within that, yes, the Saudis lifted production by around 500,000 barrels, but certainly the 173 million barrels per day lift would not be enough, we think, to drive the oil prices lower. If anything, we would have expected to see somewhat of a recovery in the oil price given that June movement. So if Iran is able to stay fully producing and fully exporting, then really that's only going to, we think, bring not significant numbers of barrels back onto the market, and certainly less than the million that OPEC were looking to increase. And that should, we think, be supportive of oil prices, not causing them to fall.
So, David, let's understand what your own perspective is on where Brent can move, because this year we've seen Brent move from 70 to 80 back to 75, and now it looks like we are once again back near $70, if not below it, of course, but at about 71. So, where do you think Brent will range for the balance of the year?
Look, we've certainly got an end-of-year price that at this stage, given the volatility, we haven't changed. It's between $74 and $84 for the Brent price. That's calendar year end. So we do think that, given what I've just spoken about, in that we think OPEC, yes, will lift production, but it won't be significantly beyond the million barrels that they were suggesting, that's going to be very supportive of oil prices going forward. And it does show, we believe, that there is more of a squeeze on the supply side than perhaps markets are thinking, and that again we think will be good tailwinds for the oil price. Hence we'll leave our current range at 74 to 84 by year end for Brent. So that does give us just a little bit of an upside over the remainder of this year.
All right, you know, honestly, we've spoken to a lot of experts, and they have this one similar point, that it's so tough now to predict what exactly will happen with crude markets, especially since Trump's administration, the decisions they take do have that reeling effect on the market. So, given the uncertainty in that administration, it's of course equally difficult to predict what could happen in oil markets as well. But David, always a pleasure to bring you on board and get in your perspective on oil prices. Thanks so much for joining in on Market Cafe.
Thank you.